Woke up about 45 minutes later, and there was a female one standing there looking at me. She was just standing there like that looking at me. And that was absolutely the most emotionless looking face I've ever seen.
Really?
I couldn't tell if she was mad, glad, sad. You know,
Kind of looking at you, huh?
she just stood there and looked at me.
Hey guys, it's Brett. We are constantly working on pushing out new stories and insight for you here at Flash of Beauty. We want answers, and so do you. But we got to level for a second. All of this travel, filming, editing, and investigation starts to take its toll. And we want the best for our viewers, no compromises. So while we're out there making amazing new videos, we can sometimes forget to take care of ourselves and our mind. And we know many of you can sometimes do the same. Get it. Life is crazy. Never mind searching for Bigfoot and other cryptids. Let's be real. Life isn't getting any less stressful for any of us. So trust us when we say that mental health is no luxury. It's a necessity. Because when your mind is sharp, everything else clicks into place. And that's why we're all about our sponsor, BetterHelp. It's professional therapy done your way. No waiting rooms, no awkward scheduling, just licensed therapists who can chat from your couch, car, or your tent. So if you're searching for some relief along with Bigfoot, maybe it's time to recharge. Head over to betterhelp.com and get matched with a therapist in just a few clicks. Stay sharp, take care of yourself. We need each other.
You can see some logs and stuff in the brush right there. That's where old Odin stood up right in front of me and scared me half to death. And this just is about 3 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. I've seen them out here, you know, this is before we put the trailer here, but I've seen them just walk right down through here. You know, this fence line over here is, between us and the neighbor, is a major travel route for them. They come down and get in our garbage cans. Y'all saw the garbage cans down there. And when we put the trailer in here, before we could get it set up, well, I came back when they pulled the trailer in and left them, I came out here, looked the next day and looked for tracks, didn't find any. And I came back the next day and looked, and I found 3 sets of juvie tracks went all the way around the trailer. Just one time. They didn't mess with it, but there were a set of clear tracks. And the interesting thing, one of the sets of tracks was 3 toads. We all lived here on the farm, and we were out here. You see the light right there? That light's been there. That light's been there since I was born. And there's been a light right there. And we were out here playing around out here catching toads and stuff like that. And just right down there, down the lane, about 200 yards, we started hearing this, god awful screaming, big loud roar. And we're like, what's that? What's that? What's that? And I remember Granddaddy says, oh, that's just that old catamount. Don't worry about it. It won't mess with you. And my dad was out here. Well, the funny thing was, and it yelled again a couple of more times down there, but you could tell it was getting closer. And in a minute, here comes Miss Terry and Miss Hudson and my grandmother and Miss Peden, all gathering us kids up and getting us in the house, And so Granny calls Mama, and we lived right there. So Mama comes over and gets me. And, what is that? What's that? And Granddaddy said it was a catamount. Well, I asked Daddy, Daddy, what's a catamount? When I asked Granddaddy, he told me, he said, well, it's sort of like a cross between a big bear and a gorilla, as best I can tell, which this was like 1957 or early 58. That's a pretty good description of it.
Yeah.
And the word Bigfoot had never been heard and wasn't even invented yet. And the word Sasquatch had never been heard in this part of the country. And so I get back over there and I asked my daddy, Daddy, what's a catamount? And he said, well, it's, sort of like a cross between a big bear and a gorilla, and maybe got some kind of cat or panther or something in it, because they can climb trees real good. And so anyway, the thing kept getting closer and closer. And it was early enough, it was in warm part of the year. And like I said, there were frogs all out here. We were all out here catching toads. Used to, you could come out here anytime you want to at night, and you could get you an old sack, and you'd catch 20, 30 toad frogs. And we'd catch them and take them to the house and put them in a bathtub. Our mothers would scream and yell and stuff like that. Somewhere there's a picture of my sister and I in a bathtub, and there's 27 toads floating in the tub with us. But anyway, and my kids used to do the same. Now, I don't know where all the toads have gone. I haven't seen I only saw one toad out here all year. But back to the story. All right. So back then we didn't have air conditioning. It was warm weather. We slept with the windows open, and with had screens on the windows. We had a attic fan, or a whole house fan, that sucked air up through the ceiling and blew it out through the roof and or out the eaves, but it pulled cool air in through the windows at night, and you slept right next to the window and with the window open. So I'm in the bed, and we all are in the bed, and this thing is, during the night, it's getting closer and closer, and it got up to the point that, let me back up, I'll show you exactly where I'm talking about. You see that gate right there? There's actually a gate right there, but it's got privet hedge grown up in it. It came up to right here. See that gate post? This is the latch side. All right, see the gate? Now there's a pipe gate there, but at the time it was one of those old stamped gates like that. And you can't even hardly look at that thing without it making a bunch of racket. It came up here to this gate and roared another time, and it grabbed a hold of the gate. And when it did, it made a bunch of racket, a bunch of cracking and popping and squeaking and everything. The Hudsons had 7 coon dogs that stayed over there at their place. Those 7 dogs came boiling off their porch, off the porch and out from under the porch, and came running over here, raising Cain. And these weren't just plain old, what do they call it? Old Walker hounds. They had some old black and tans. They had some old plot hounds. They even had a couple of Catahoulas. I mean, these were really gamey, rough old dogs. They were bad, badass dogs when they wanted to be. They never bothered us kids or anything. But anyway, so we're over there and we hear them, big up, and they tore into that booger. And you heard it. You could hear the dogs, horrendously loud fighting and everything. And you heard the booger roar a time or two. Then all of a sudden, you started hearing, amidst all of it, you started hearing, they started hearing dogs screaming and carrying on. And I mean, it was awful sounding. And horrendously awful sound. My grandfather came running out of the house right there, out of that corner door right there. Well, you can't see it, it's behind the Connex now, but he came running out the kitchen door right there in the northeast corner of the house, and he ran out here and he started shooting out through the woods. And he didn't shoot at the booger, he very specifically shot out through the treetops and stuff. And my dad, like I said, we lived right there in that grove of pine trees that you can't hardly see. My dad got up and jumped in his shoes and grabbed a shotgun, a Browning A5 shotgun loaded with buckshot, and jumped in the truck. We could still hear a dog out here, and there was a dog, a mangled dog, right out here past this crepe myrtle bush, and Daddy came up here and shot it and killed it and put it out of its misery. All right. Right then and there, that thing, including the one Daddy had to put out of his misery, it had killed 6 of the 7 dogs. There was one dog made it back and was up under the porch. All right, this happened probably at about 9:30 at night. By 1:30 in the morning, the Hudsons had packed up and moved, left, gone, never to come back. Except the men would come back out here and run the sawmill for Daddy, but they wouldn't live on the place anymore. See that tree that stands out in the field by itself right there? We call that the booger tree. Now, the next it was this time of year. No, it was actually later. It was like in late January, early February, following this incident with the dogs. My grandfather took me out here and we drove out the roadbed, drove me up to that tree. We stopped short of the tree, and he never called me by my name, he just called me boy. Now remember, I'm just 3 years old. And so this didn't make sense to me at the time. Later as an adult, I never forgot it. But as an adult, I finally figured out what was going on. He pulled up about 50, 100 feet short of that tree. And he said, "You see that tree right there, boy?" And I said, "Yes, sir." I said, "Yeah." Well, I didn't say yes, sir. I said, probably, "Yes, sir." Anyway, he said, "Those catamounts sit up in that tree and watch us. And every time I come back here, they jump down, they run off down that holler." And I'll show you the holler when we get there. And back then, we didn't have all these trees here. So they could see, if you were sitting in that tree, you could see all the way up here and you could see everything going on. And they, now, when they want to know what's going on around here, they sit up in these trees over here. The boogers still run this hedgerow right here. And what's crazy, we'll be sitting up there on Melanie Tom's porch, and they'll sneak around and they'll throw rocks around the end of this hedgerow up in the yard. I've got a whole collection of, in fact, I'll give y'all, if my sister hadn't thrown them away, I'll give y'all a couple of booger rocks. Because, we sit out there and they throw them up in the yard. We're sitting there and you'll hear them coming, click, click, clicking through the leaves, and then they'll do and roll out there in the yard. And they do it back here too. Look at here, this gate's been knocked down, honey. Mm-hmm. I wonder what that's all about. Huh. Yeah, there's a cave back here that there's a big story about that. The boogers live in the cave. It's also got an endangered bat that lives in there. That ridge right there, the next ridge over, that's the center of their main home territory. This time of year, if we come down here coon hunting or something like that, if the dogs get too close over there, they'll get screamed at, and we'll get screamed at. I got a buddy that comes out here and coon hunts, and they came around the corner back there, and his dog got too close down here, and he's got a GPS tracker collar on her. And he said all of a sudden he saw on the tracker that she came around and was coming down very close to where we were coming, and she just stopped, and she turned around and ran wide open as fast as she could go back to the truck. And when he got back up there, she was under the truck. Actually, wow. It's an SUV, but she was hiding under the SUV, and she never does that. Well, that's happened to us several times back here. The dogs had run into the boogers, and they would come running back to the truck, and they hide under the truck, or if the tailgate was open, they could get in the dog box, they'd dive into the dog box. Yeah. Well, we've had a lot of activity out here over the years. But when I was a boy, and I'd walk out here, there were always teepee structures out here, always. From this tall to that tall out here. But when my dad opened that road up, it went away. About 3 ridges over, there's a ridge I showed you, then there's that ridge that you can see there. I had an encounter with a female one when I was in college. It scared me half to death. I'd been back there squirrel hunting, and it was in October. It was a beautiful morning, and there was an area back there that had a bunch of carpet moths on the ground, and I'd been out pretty late the night before. I decided to lay down and take me a nap, and I woke up about 45 minutes later, and there was a female one standing there looking at me. She was just standing there like that looking at me. And that was absolutely the most emotionless looking face I've ever seen. Really? I couldn't tell if she was mad, glad, sad. She just stood there and looked at me. And I tried to act like I was still asleep. I just had my eyes cracked open, but she'd already busted me. And she just sat there stood there for probably a couple of minutes, just like that. And then she just started walking, you know, this way. And I wasn't in, when I first saw her, I was laying with my feet pointed this way, and the bluff was like right here. And I could have real easily thrown myself off the bluff. It was only about 40 feet right there. And anyway, I used to jump off 60-footers all the time when I was a kid. And so I wasn't scared to do it. Didn't want to get my .22 rifle wet. And plus over there, I'd have to swim a pretty good ways before I could get out of the, you know, swim up in one of these sloughs where I could, you know, get up out of the water. And I wasn't too thrilled about doing that. So I figured as long as she stayed where she was and didn't threaten me, I'd lay there, and I did. And she hung around, like I said, for a couple of minutes. Actually, she didn't hang around. She just stood there looking at me. She never moved, never made the tiniest expression with her face. And then she just did like that. Just walked up down the hill. After she was gone, though, that's when I felt that I was really in danger. I felt like that there was another one there. It's probably the alpha male was somewhere close. Mm-hmm. And I got so scared then I almost went ahead and went over the bluff. But I laid there and I got thinking about, you know, what would happen if I did. And finally I just said, I talked to it. That's one of the first times I ever talked to one. I just said, look, you know, I couldn't see it, but I knew there was one there.
Yeah.
And within earshot. And I said, look, I don't want any trouble. I don't mean y'all any harm. I was just back here hunting squirrels. If you'll let me get up and get out of here, I said, I've got a gun. I'll keep it pointed to the ground. If you'll leave me alone, I'll get up and I'll get out of here as quick as I can. And I won't come back. And that's what I did. I got up, got out of there. That was in I think about 79. It was either in 78 or 79. And do you know that I didn't go back over there until about 3 years ago?
Really?
I'm dead serious. The first close encounter I had with them as an adult was back over there, all the way over in the northwest corner of the farm. We were having cattle go missing back there. Usually smaller cattle, you know, heifers and stuff like that. And we'd buy heifers or steer, you know, young steers, young heifers, and turn them loose. And the herd would be back over in there, and they would we'd have one disappear every once in a while. And we thought there was an old road bed that comes onto the farm from the west. We thought somebody was coming in there and rustling off of us. Oh. So I started coming in and I'd walk back there, and I had a place where I'd hide near where that road bed came onto the property. I'd hide back there. Mm-hmm. And I had my Doberman pincher with me, and I'd hang out till, you know, 1:30, sometimes 2 in the morning, and never saw or heard anything. Every once in a while I'd hear a booger whoop back over in this part of the farm at a distance, but it didn't bother me. And one night I was back here, and we had about a little bit better than a half moon. Mm-hmm. And it was real bright. It was a real bright night, and I hadn't taken a flashlight with me. And it was on a Thursday night, and I stayed back there till about 1:30, and I started walking back. And if we can get there without getting stuck, I'll show you the place over there we call the Bee Ridge. Is where we used to have a whole bunch of beehives. And I was walking back, and I'd made it about a quarter of a mile, you know, about 400 yards or so. And I had gotten and I was walking around the Bee Ridge, and I was getting ready to turn and come walking up the old lane down there where the booger came from when I was 2. And I started getting this creepy feeling, and I felt like something was over here in the woods beside us watching me. And my Doberman, at about that time I heard him whine, and he was walking all hunched up and had his little stub of his tail tucked tight down, and he looked like somebody had kicked him. You know, he was walking, and he kept looking back over his shoulder like that. And I was carrying an old Lee Enfield 303 British Army rifle that my grandfather had sporterized and given to me. And I was carrying it, and I eased it off my shoulder and had it in my hands. I'm walking along, and it just kept getting worse and worse feeling. And I reached up there and I flipped the safety off, and it made the tiniest little noise when it did. And I mean, barely audible noise. At that instant, about here to the truck, one screamed. There was one that was back over my shoulder, about right there. Let loose a blood-curdling scream, and I mean, it was so loud it shook me all the way through my body. And if you ever been standing on the sidewalk when a marching band comes by, how you can feel it shake you? Yeah. That's the way this one was, but a whole lot more, a whole lot worse. And I couldn't control myself, and I knew not to run from a wild animal, but I couldn't help myself. I busted out running. I ran straight out towards the middle of the field, and I got out there about 50 yards or so, and I suddenly realized that, you know, I don't need to be running away from this animal. And I slammed on the brakes, and I whirled around my rifle up like this. Now my Doberman Pinscher goes past me. I had somehow managed to stay ahead of that dog. And he never broke stride though. When I stood there and I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm here. I ain't even got a dog to protect me. And this thing was stomping around the woods back and forth, and I could see there was a bunch of saplings and stuff along the edge of the tree line. I could see all these treetops moving and whooping. And it stopped a couple of times, and it screamed at me again. And apparently it was, you know, he'd grab a hold of a couple of them and it would scream, like, ah! Because the tops of those things up are just like that. And I mean, you could see it clearly in the moonlight. I was absolutely terrified. Here comes a boat. Wow. And finally, I just backed away, and I backed away over. As you're going to the south there, you're going over the face of a hill. Yeah. I backed away over that hill till I couldn't see where it was. It screamed probably another 8-10 times or so as I was backing away. Finally, when I got over the hill where I couldn't see it, I turned around. I'd run for about 50 yards, and I'd turn around like that, you know, and I'd, and when I was sure it wasn't chasing me, I'd run for about another 50, 60 yards. And I got up to the house, and the old dog was he just sitting there bouncing, trying to get in the back door, you know, wanting in the house. And I got my keys out, and I'm sitting here, and I was shaking so bad that I couldn't even get the key in the keyhole. So I had to hold on to my keys with both hands to get it in the keyhole. I finally got in there. Now, that was on a Thursday night. The next night, Friday night, I was out on a date, and came in about 1, and the bathroom's on the back side of the house, so I was in there in the bathroom, you know, getting cleaned up, getting ready for bed, and I came walking out of the bathroom. When you come out, you either go into the kitchen or the back bedroom. Well, my bedroom was the front bedroom, and you walked through the back bedroom to get to the front bedroom. So I came out into the back bedroom, and I heard my dog growling, and I'd never heard him growl before. And he was standing there looking at the front windows, the south windows, and he was all stiff-legged, and he had his head down, and all his hackles were up, and he was sitting there growling, and I saw a shadow cut across the corner of the front windows. And then he starts turning, and he's following something. And then I saw this big shadow came all the way across the windows on the west side of the house. Those windows are pretty tall. And I later on went back and figured from the angle of the moon and measuring everything that whatever it was at least 10 feet tall. That's something down on the highway. But anyway, its shadow moved across the windows in the west side of the front bedroom, and there were windows on the west side of the back bedroom too, and it went across those. And it started out across the backyard, and I was too scared to go over there and look through the blinds out in the backyard, either in the bathroom window or the north window there in the back bedroom. Finally, I got up enough guts to do it, and because that light out in the yard there shines into the backyard, and I finally raised up the Venetian blind and looked out there. I didn't see a thing, but that was the first close encounter I had with one as a where I was really scared as an adult. I can't remember now. The deal with the female one was, I think it was right after that, like I think it was within 2 or 3 weeks of that. Is the recorder working real good?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Sometimes you'll hear them clacking rocks together off down in there. The way you tell whether it's a booger or a real owl, the booger will go, that was a booger. The owl will always put a trill on the end of it. They'll go whoop, 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 whoop. They'll roll off the end. When they just cut it off like that one did, that's a booger. When they don't have the trill on the end.
Okay.
Listen. No trill. That's a booger. Where that's coming from is up there where we call it the inner sanctum. That's where the females, when they have their little ones, that's where they hang out the most. That's that ridge that you see starting up right there, going that way, is where that ridge. Listen. That's a booger, and he's getting closer.
That's a house over there.
I think so. I'll tell you another thing you hear a lot when they're easing around, and it's another locator call. It's a flat monotone whistle. It'll go like that.
Oh.
Yeah.
We've heard that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's the only thing. There ain't nothing else out there that does that. They usually don't, or often don't, answer a call with the identical call.
Okay.
Now, when they're doing that little flat whistle or a little whoop, you hear that? I mean, they'll do that. They'll answer those in kind. As they get older, they get better and better at it. And really, the only way you can tell is you got to listen for that trill on the end. But you'll hear the little ones try it sometimes, and it's pretty bad. But I called one for the very first time when I was 13, and it came to me. My dad and I were out fishing down the river a ways, and we heard one way up the slough, a mile or so away, started hollering, and I said, told my dad, I said, I'm gonna holler at it. He said, go ahead. We were fishing up in a place called Coffee Slough, and which is really shallow. And anyway, so I tried to owl call, do that owl call back to it, and it was terrible. And I said, golly, that was terrible. Dad said, yeah, that wasn't very good. But it answered. And so that hit and bounced.
Yeah.
That was thrown. Yeah.
What are we looking at? I
Well, there
heard
was
it.
a rock.
There was a rock or an acorn or something just thrown up here. But, so I hollered at it the second time, and I did a whole lot better that time. And it hollered back, and it was obvious, it was clearly coming towards us. And it's getting, and I hollered back again, and it hollered, it answered back, and it was obviously closer. And I noticed my dad that the boat was moving out towards the middle of the slough. and it was coming, and about every 10-15 seconds it was screaming and getting closer and closer. My dad, this is back in the 60s, and about 68, and my dad reached down and he flipped you had to, back then you didn't have that roller control like you do on trolling motors now.
Yeah.
You actually had a switch down on the side of the foot control that you had to flip, and he reached in there and put that thing up on high, and so we're trolling towards the center of the slough. Now, the slough is mostly about 3.5 feet deep, except right in the middle of it there's an old creek bed that goes through there, and even that's only about 7 to 9 feet deep. And my dad, the thing's still gaining on us. My dad said, "Son, hop down there." And I'm sitting up on the back platform, the casting platform in the back. My dad's up on the front. He said, "Hop down there, son, and fire up the big motor." And he's pulling up the trolling motor. I said, "Okay," and I cranked it up. And I said, "Where you want me to go?" He said, "Head right there between those two cypress trees." And I think that was a real owl.
Yeah, that had a trail on it.
Yeah, that's a real owl. Woo, 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 woo. Woo, 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 woo. Woo, 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 woo. Woo, 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 woo. He didn't like that. Listen, listen. That's a barred owl that's doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I can do a great horned owl call, and he'll get out of here. They're mortal enemies. Well, great horned owls kill barred owls. This time of the day, if you get out here and get to making a bunch of knocks and stuff, if you hear a knock and you knock back, that'll piss them off, because they use those knocks to locate where they are before they start feeding. And you can get screamed at and stuff thrown at you. Of course, they don't throw it right at you. They just try to discourage you, or they're either trying to get your attention or just get you to move on. When they're throwing the little stuff, way out in front of you, or just the little bitty things near you, like whatever that was, that's just you and juvies messing with you.
Okay.
When they're throwing the cantaloupe-sized rocks and small watermelon-sized stuff around you, that's when you need to find somewhere else to be. I've only ever seen 2 people get hit by a rock thrown by a booger, and both of them were accidents, clearly accidents. Yeah, my old research partner Clyde got hit in the shin with about a grapefruit size, or almost cantaloupe size, chunk of granite out in New Mexico, and we'd been clearly run out of an area. We were coming down a canyon, coming down a mountain. We were in the edge of the Mescalero Apache Indian Reservation near White Sands. North of, we were between Carrizozo, New Mexico, and Tularosa, New Mexico, when this happened. And we had been getting watermelon-sized rocks hitting around too close and been getting growled at. We decided we needed to back out. So we were leaving, and as we were going down the canyon leaving, going back the way we came, the rocks were getting smaller. But it was, like I said, a chunk of granite about that big, pretty round. It was pretty smooth. It came over us and hit a boulder about, I don't know, 15, 18 feet in front of us, and bounced off of that, hit another boulder and ricocheted off that and hit Clyde in the shin. And he hollered, and it took him down. I thought he'd broken his leg, but it didn't. It just put a big bruise on it. But instantly, that was the end of the rock throwing. Not another pebble was moved after that. We got on out of there. And then where we were down there at that campground where I did the holler, and we got the T-Rex scream back and then the looting call. All right, we were down there and sitting around the pavilion, and they were started off throwing little stuff up there on the roof of the pavilion, and rolling down. And then they got to going to bigger rocks and things. And there was a rock about like that, hit a tree trunk and ricocheted off the tree trunk, hit the edge of the roof, and came down and hit Vicky Fulcher in the side or the hip. And that was the end of the rock throwing instantly after that. Biggest rock I've ever seen thrown by a booger, and I wasn't there, but the guy told me what happened, and I believed it because he was getting chased out of the woods, and we were in a same hunting club, and the thing clearly ran him out of the woods. It's a long story, but he told me this one particular place, that thing, he said it threw a suitcase-sized rock at him, and I said, "Did you have to jump out of the way?" And he said, "Well, no, it hit right by me, and And I saw it coming and I ran, but he said it would have hit right by me. And I said, well, he wasn't throwing it at you. He was trying to keep you moving along. I said, because he had stopped to catch his breath, and had been running him for over a mile, and he panicked and ran. And so we went back down there. We found the rock. Took me and another guy, and this is back when I was young, and I was in my late 20s, early 30s, and we picked it up and managed to get it up in the back of my truck. And he had told us where it came from, and we went up into the woods, and we found where it had been pulled up off the ground, or out of the ground. And then we stretched a tape down, and it, from where it had been picked up to where it hit the ground down near that guy, was 63 feet. And we took the rock and weighed it. We went down to the feed store and weighed it, and it weighed just short of 370 pounds. Yeah, weighed just short of 370 pounds. It threw it where it came up out of the ground to where it hit was 63 feet. Now, I don't know if it had taken a step or two towards him or not, but the fact that it was inside the tree line when it threw it, it had to have been thrown at least about 55 feet, because he said that it was still inside the tree line when it threw it. And from where it hit to the edge of the tree line was about 55 feet. Well, up in your part of the country, when you, not in the Cascades, but when you go over onto the east slope, just looking out across the desert, like down towards Yakima and all that.
Yeah.
And you know where they got the ponderosa, there's still ponderosa pines there.
Yeah.
All right. We were doing a bunch of work out at Yakima, proving grounds, and I got to talking to a guy that said that he got to tell us that worked there at Yakima, and on one of the test reactors out there. And he got talking about it that his dad and his uncles and his grandfather used to cut wood up there.
Mm-hmm.
And they said this was in the late 40s, early 50s. Said they had this old Buick that, one of these big battle tank Buicks. He said it's about a 48, 49 model Buick. And that's what they went to work in every day.
Mm-hmm.
And he said they would come out there, and he said they would drive up the mountain, into the mountain to a certain point, and they'd park it. And then they would go on up the mountain and cut wood all day and, do their thing. And then they'd come down and get in the car and leave. Well, he said they came down there one day and the door was gone off. It was either the driver's door, or I don't know if it was a four-door car. It was either, if it was a two-door car, it was the driver's door. If it was a four-door car, it was the back door, on the driver's side. He said it was gone, but he said as it was a huge, big, heavy door. It was gone. And they looked and looked for it and couldn't find it. So we go back up there. Here we are almost 40 years later. And they showed me exactly where the car had been parked. They said because they used to go up there a fair amount, and they would camp out up there and cook out up there and stuff. Of course, and you could tell that the pines and everything up there weren't virgin pines. That they were second growth pines. And I know what second growth looks like because this is second growth. This was logged off when I was a kid. And we got a lot of pines up there on a little bit further south of here. Anyway, I got to looking where he said they parked the car. Man, it was steeper than that. I mean, it's like looking off this bluff over him, really steep. Real steep incline going down. And I said, well, how far did y'all look down there? And he said, well, I don't know. We looked down there, 200 or 300 yards. I said, dude, I said, these things can throw like you can't believe. So we went down. There was switchback. We went down and hit the switchback. We came back, and then where it cut back again, we stopped and we went down there, and we looked and looked, and we actually I didn't find it. One of the guys found a car door down there. It's all rusty and banged up and everything. And so I started trying to measure it and figure the angle and everything. And it had gone like almost 200 yards horizontally, but vertically is like, over 400 yards. And actually more than that, I think it's like 500 yards. Of course, who's to say that it didn't hit on its edge and tumble down through there? But it was like almost 600 yards down the slope. I don't know if it's that far. I can't remember. That notebook I wrote all that stuff down in is gone. I lost 6 journals full of sightings back years ago, and that's another story. I ain't gonna say that on film. That draw right up there is where the cave is, where they come and go. They've got it in. I don't know if it's a little gray bat or a little brown bat or something, but there's an endangered bat. It's a maternity cave for this endangered bat species. So they wanted to fence it off, and they talked my dad into it. So they got out there and they fenced it off. My dad went down there the next morning to put a lock on the gate, and something had come up there and grabbed a hold of the fence and just ripped it up. And this was heavy 9-gauge cyclone fencing. So they came back and they dug a foot-deep trench, and they got new fencing, and this time they put the fencing down in the bottom of the trench and poured concrete around it. And then they put kickers up on top of the fence with 4 strands of barbed wire on it. All right. My dad went down there again to put a lock on the gate, and the thing was yanked down from the top, was just bent down. Now I was a porker then. I weighed about 340 pounds, and I had a friend that weighed more than that. So the two of us got over there on another span, and we jumped up and we grabbed a hold of the fence. So we had about at least 650 pounds. Actually, we had probably close to 700 pounds hanging on that fence, and we both got in unison, yanking and pulling, trying to pull it down. We couldn't even budge it. So something way heavier than 700 pounds got up there and just snatched that fence down. And the fence wasn't pulled over; it was just bent straight down. And so they decided to just leave it alone. Back in the day when we came back here, it was extremely common to come in, and coming out there would be stuff down across the road. Yeah, but they hadn't done that much in quite a few years. There was a big fight between our alpha and the alpha of the next troop to the east of us back last spring in April when they migrated out of here, and it's changed the dynamic. I ran into walking the dogs one night, probably in May. I ran into an alpha pair, male and female, over there by Granny's house that I was pretty sure it was not the one that I had seen before. And I think I really don't know exactly what's going on right now with our troop. All right. It don't work very good. That tree right there is, I think that's the one. There was one of them, there was an adult, which I think was Odin, up in this one right here. Not very far up. And then, I believe it was right in here. One of these right here, I can show you photos, daytime photos of it, and then you can look at the video and you can pretty well tell what you're looking at.
Yeah.
One day we were getting ready for an outing here. Bunch of folks were coming over. And you see how these privet hedges grow out?
Yeah.
Our friend Troy Allen, no, it was Greg, our friend Greg Howes. The truck was sitting right here. We were faced coming this way, opposite direction we are now, just right there just the other side where the road curves. And Troy Allen and I were down here with a pole saw trimming these hedges back out of the road so we could get through here with our campers and stuff without getting scratched. And Greg was sitting here in the truck with a broke leg, with a broken leg. All right, hand him that light, honey. If you shine your light off down in there, that's a deep draw. There's a big culvert down the bottom of it. You can shine this light down off it. You can see how deep it is. See how it goes. It's deep.
Oh yeah, it's real deep.
Yeah. All right. Broad daylight. We're talking about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Greg's in the passenger side front seat, or where you're sitting, but the truck's pointed the other way, and he hears something, brush cracking down there, and he looks up, and there's a dadgum. We're back here running the pole saw, the steel, chainsaw, pole saw. Greg leans up and he looks down there. There is a booger down there easing up on us. He doesn't realize that Greg's in the truck. Greg sat there and watched him as he came up, and he said he got within 15, 20 feet of us.
Wow.
And just stopped. And of course, Greg's about to have a conniption fit, not knowing what the booger's fixing to do. But he said it was a big one. He said it was a big old alpha, big old 10-footer. But this has always been a travel route right through here. You see that mulberry bush right there? You see that?
This one here over. Yeah.
Well, all right, now look. These are wild cherries here, and that old
Oh,
privet
cool.
hedge all grown
Okay.
up in there, that's a mulberry bush. Now, I've cut that thing back 3 or 4 times,
Okay.
and you see my trailer sitting there.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you 2 series of the pictures that were taken right here,
Okay.
about 6 months apart.
Okay.
And the when we get back over here, that's when I met Odin for the first time.
Oh.